So today we're going to do our Alice-inspired drawing. So hopefully you've managed to print off your PDF and you've got the pale outline of just Alice's face. It's hard to see her on my demo area at the minute. But what we're going to do is we'll eventually colour up her face. But the main thing that we're going to concentrate is drawing all the elements around her. So she's got her quirky teacups and her toadstools and the cat and the hare. And in between doing the drawing, what I'll do is I'll do the drawing of, say, the hare, and then we'll do a little bit of colouring, and then we'll move on and do something else so that we're keeping it varied rather than drawing it all at once. Because that's how I tend to work. I'll work on, I'm going to do a hare now, so then I'll draw and colour the hair a bit. So the main things that we've got are our coloured pencils. It doesn't matter what brand you're using. And if we've got an HB pencil to do your initial drawing, I'm going to turn that around so that I've got this here. Have you got some buttons to draw your clocks and things? Doesn't matter what if you don't want to draw around a button, you can just do a freestyle circle if you want. And your erasers and all those other things. It doesn't matter if you don't have the gel pens, because we can just use our pencils. The gel pens mostly for the little chain that's coming around the clock. But it doesn't matter if you don't have that. So if you prefer to go around the outline that you've already got with a normal pencil so that you can see it better, you can do that. But if not, well, we'll just crack on. But for those who are just here for the first time, and if you haven't used pencils before, I sometimes just ask if you want to have a little practice of pressure, just having a go. So if we get a blank piece of paper and just choose any sort of pencil, any colour. I'll get a blank piece of paper. I'll just use this one actually, and then I'll use other. And just practice with the pressure. So you'll find that if you start off and just make a little bit of colour with whatever your first pressure is going down, try and see if you can go lighter, and then try from that point to go darker. So you'll be able to see just how much variation in colour you can get. So I'm going lighter and lighter at the minute. And then from here, I'm going to come back and press down a little bit harder, and then press harder again, and then press harder again. And you'll see it getting darker and darker as you get. So the idea is to not start where we're getting really dark, because that's you burnishing your colour. And you can burnish it at the end when you're happy and you're pushing all your colours together. But initially, you want to keep it really light so that you can build layers up on top of that. So that's just for anybody who's just doing this for the first time. That's just a crash course on pencils. So we'll get started, and I'm going to start with the hair. Okay, so if you've got your pencil, can everybody see okay? And do you want me to move it down a little bit closer? Yeah. So I'm going to, because you might not be able to see my outline, I'm just going to go around my outline so that you can see it a little bit better. You don't have to if you don't want to. So I'm just doing the outline of Alice's face so that you see where I am. Yeah. Right, so for the hair, we're going to start at the side of her face. And if you just want to start off with just a little line coming out from her cheek. Yeah, and then we're going to use this area, the shape of the side of her face, to create an ear. So if we come all the way down to perhaps where her lip line is, just with a line. So you've made the hair's ear already. And then we're going to create the top of his head just by doing a little curl coming around. Yeah, and we kind of know now that that's going to be the top of the rabbit's head. So I'm going to do the eye now. So just creating an oval shape just underneath where you've done that. Just creating the shape of an eye. Now let me know if I'm going at the right pace and things. I don't want you to feel like you're rushing. So hopefully you've got your eye in, and now we know that we can use this eye as a guide to create the rest of the head.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just come along the top of the eye and then follow, use that eye as your guide to bring down the side of his head. And then once you've done that, you've got a little area where we can create a little nose. So I'm just going to bring it down slightly further than the eye, and then just a little bobble bit, like so. And then we're going to use the bottom of this eye to be the mirror to do the rest of the face. So just use that to finish off his head and take it right into her face. And hopefully you've now got a little hair. And so inside the eye, if we just want to create an iris, just by doing a circle inside there, we'll come back and we're going to use our red pencils to start giving it a red eye in a minute. So we now know where Alice's chin is. So I just want to, from this point, create her little blouse. So I'm just going to now, from the bottom of the rabbit's head about here, just bring out a diagonal line. I need to move it in a bit, sorry. Is that okay? And then from the bottom of her chin, if you do a straight line down, and then get that diagonal line to join up with that, then you've created her collar for her blouse. And if you just mirror it going off the page at the other side. And now we know we've got this straight line from her collar where we can create the hare's body. So from this straight line, just following it all the way down and taking it off the page. I'm now going to create a little collar similar to what she's got on the rabbit. So just underneath his eye, just bringing out in a diagonal line and bringing it along like so. Now, if you want to get a button, we're going to create a clock in between the hair and the rest of the page. So we're going to put it in between her hair and in between the rabbit. So I'm going to place my button round about there. It's quite a large button, but it's up. You can have whatever size of clock you want, or you can just do it freestyle with your hand if you want to draw a circle. And so I'm going to now just draw around that button. So I'm going to now use where the rabbit's collar is to create the rest of his body. So just doing a straight line down to meet your circle that you've just done. And if you just imagine an imaginary line now going through the circle to pick up where the rest of his clothes is going to be, just bring another straight line and then take it straight off the page. You can do a little squiggle if you want to make it that it looks like he's got a nightie that's rugged. You can have a play. And then from there, using this point to create a bit of a leg. So coming just down the side and then going around the corner, we're going to create his foot just by coming up and then just creating a foot that goes just, doesn't have to be a fancy foot, just 3 kind of toes. Everybody keeping up with me okay? Yeah. Right, so I'm going to leave where we are drawing and we're going to bring in a bit of excitement and some colour. So we'll start to do the hare's eye. Now, I did his eye in reds. So for anybody who's just joined me, today I'm using Prismacolors mostly and a little bit of Faber-Castell, but it doesn't matter. If if I'm going to do it red, what I'll do is I'll find 3 shades of either pinks and reds, because it's nice to layer it up to get to your darkest. So I'm kind of starting with a pink, and then I'm going to use a magenta and a red, but it really doesn't matter what you decide. As long as you've got 3 kind of tones that are going to, with the darkest tone being what you want your eye colour to be. So if you wanted the rabbit's eye to be blue, just use 3 shades of blue. And I always start with the lightest colour first. So I'm going to start with my rosy pinky colour. And before that, actually, we have to give him a pupil. So if you want to just create a little pupil in the centre there, it can be whatever shape. You can have it just straight down or fat, or have a play around with what size of pupil you want. And so with the pale pink, I'm just going to do an outline. I should tell you as well that the original picture took me 10 hours to do. We're attempting to do it in 4, but we'll get the majority of it done, and it might be that you just layer it up later on, finishing off your layers. So you've got your light colour, and if you keep it light, circular motions. And then I'm going to use the crimson red, and I'm just going to create some little lines in there. So with this pencil, just doing some lines going in towards the pupil, a bit like a clock. And then using this colour to do little circular motions, just going around the outside, just to start darkening it up. And then again in towards the pupil. So the central part is going to be light, but it's going to be at its darkest going around the pupil and around the outside. And then I start to go around that line with a bit more pressure and start to darken up the outside. And then move up to the darkest shade that you've got. And mine is the magenta. And then just doing a little bit more of the same, just going over that and adding more pink into the eye. So try to keep the black kind of colours until the end. So, or if you are wanting to use your blacks straight away, I would advise that you use a piece of paper that you lean over, so that you're not like taking your colour all over the page. So I'm just going to use a brown or a sepia or a grey or something that's a little bit darker but just not quite black yet, just to emphasize your hare's eye. So we're basically just going around that line that we've created at the top. And then if you want to have a sparkle in there, just draw your sparkle, but you can always just colour in the pupil and use a white gel pen if you want, because the hare's eye is quite small in comparison to when we do our big eyes, so the detail can get lost a little bit. But if you just want to colour in the pupil with a sepia or a brown, now we'll come back to that with a black at some point. If you've got a grey, has anybody got any kind of grey coloured pencil? We're going to start going round the rabbit's eye, just with little circular motions and keeping it light. So starting at the outside of the line you've just drawn and just doing little circular motions all the way along the top of his eye. Can you see okay, everybody? Do you need it down a little bit? Everything's okay? Good. And then with the same pencil, if you want to just highlight the bottom of his eye, and then if try and have your pencil quite sharp, just create another line underneath that initial line. So I'm having it quite dark at one side, fading off a little bit, and then a little bit at that side. So it's like a double sort of line. And then also mirroring the line we've already done for the top of his head, just doing another one with the grey pencil inside there. Just a little line. And then also with your grey, we're going to create the inside of his ear. So just mirroring what you've already done, just having it on the inside, coming down, and then again, quite close to her face, but still leaving a space to let you see that that is the inside of his ear. And I gave my rabbit a little red nose, but you know, if you want to give your rabbit a black nose, then do. But I'm just going to go in now with my red and just colour in that little nose. And I've left a little bit, just a tiny little bit of white between there and the pencil line. But you don't need to get wrapped up in that. It's just the way that I've done it. And then again, with my red, keeping it light, finding a little space where I want him to have a little cheek. And I'm just going to do a little red circle there. Now, if you do it light, these are all areas you can come back in and layer it up again and again. So we need to come back and do more layers in his eye and of course his cheek, but we've made a start. And so like what we did with his eye, having it light, then dark, we're doing the same with his ear. So with going back to the same pencils that I've used in his eye, in the ear. So I'm using my pink and I'm going to start putting my first light tone in there. And then building it up to the next tone. So that was my red. And then keeping it at its darkest at the top and letting some of that fade into that light pink that's there. So just leaving that first layer just with one colour and then having it really dark right in there at that point and coming down. And then you can go over that again with your darkest tone and build that up again even more. Gets it more and more vibrant. You can see how it gets deeper just by having it darker there and then the three other tones getting lighter. Hopefully that's coming across okay on the camera. And then with the grey, I'm just going to go around and emphasize, just darken up that outside line of his ear. And then I'm going to bring white in to colour inside his ear. So if you have a white or a cream, whatever's best for you. And the idea is to try and get some of that grey to come in with the white. So if you go in over the top of the white, you can kind of drag some of that in with your white. And that'll show up more once you've got her face and things all coloured. And so for the rest of the space that's left, just make that white. Just it's like colouring that little bit in, and then later on we can come in and layer it up a little bit more. So we've made a start. So if you want to use your ruler, you can, to create the little diamonds inside his coat, or you can just go freestyle and just draw some lines. I just went freestyle because it was Alice in Wonderland. It's a bit quirky. It's nothing in it's perfect. It's all a bit. So just going in the opposite direction of the line of what his coat is. Just start to put in some lines just diagonally from each other. And eventually we'll come in and colour all these diamonds black, but you kind of want to leave that until the end so that you're not getting black everywhere. And then after that, we're going to go the opposite direction to start creating some little diamonds. So just going this way. Could be diamonds or squares, whatever it happens to be. And I'm not overly bothered about them being straight. Just keeping it quirky. And life's too short. So there, that's what we've got his coat done. We'll come back and colour it in a little while. And what I did, I gave him I used a blue pencil, so any shade of blue, whatever you like, and just gave him a little bow tie. So just where his little shirt ends, just giving him a little hoop or loop. And then another one going through that, and then having some squiggles coming down. You can come in later on and keep going over that to darken it up. So that's like a little bow tie type thing. So I'm going back to my normal pencil. I'm going to use my technical one. I'm going to try and find the center of this circle and just put in a little dot or a little circle that you can eventually go over it with a fine liner to make it really black at the end. And then I'm going to go round and create another circle within that. So just using the circle you've got as your guide to create another circle going around inside it. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then once you've done that, you do another one and just maybe have it a little bit thinner. So that's good mindfulness once you start doing circles and circles. You have to really concentrate, don't you? And so that last little circle that we've done, if you imagine that this is the center of the clock and then you go straight up and this is going to be like 12 o'clock. Yeah, just do a little line there, make it a bit, that's going to be your thickest sort of line. So you can make it a bit square-like. And then if you do the same coming along from the center to here, which is going to be like your 3 o'clock. And then again, coming down to the 6 o'clock. And then over here to the 9 o'clock. And so in between those little marks you've made, just do lots of little lines, which again, it doesn't need to be the exact amount of what there would be on a clock. I didn't count them at all. I just did lines. And it's up to you what times you want to put on your clock. I did it as in a 12 and I also did 10, which it shouldn't be 10 down there, but it's Alice in Wonderland. So if you want to do the right time, do your V and your 1 at the bottom. And I'm just going to do an X up here. Just draw an X and 2 1s. And I'll stick with what I already did on X down here. But if you wanted to put all your numbers going in, do that. And then it's just a case of putting in your hands of your clock. So just a line coming out from the center to wherever you want your clock time to be. And then just draw a tiny little triangle on the end of your line. Right, so if you want to get some yellows, so I'm starting off with a pale yellow, creamy color, and then it gets darker and then darker to like an ochre typed yellow. So just 3 shades. And so the idea now to try and get your clock to look like it's kind of round is to have it quite white in the center and have it at its darkest on the outside lines. So I tend to start just by putting in a little bit of the cream in just odd areas, but finding a little bit in the center where it's going to be shiny. So just kind of going around the outsides, if that makes sense. And then the central point being quite white. And it doesn't have to be all the way around, just find areas. And then once you've done that, like what we did with the eye, just start building it up. Getting darker and darker. So whatever your second dark tone is, bring that in now. And then just go around the outside and darken so that you've got it quite dark. And then you start to see that white bit start to show up a little bit more. And then your darkest one, if you've got like an ochre or something, doesn't matter, and then go around again and just darken up. And same on the inside, that line that's going around there. So yeah, so it's there and there. And eventually we'll start putting blacks and things around that to emphasize it, and shadows and things. We'll do that, you know, once we've got a little bit more done. And so I just used a white in the center of the clock. So just, and I pressed down hard. I'm burnishing it straight away because I'm not really going to put anything else in there. So burnishing, just press hard. And eventually we can maybe put a few shadows in there that'll sit on top of that. How are we doing? Is everybody doing okay? Everybody happy with what they're achieving so far? Good, good, good. Thumbs up. Oh, I forgot about my drink. Right, we're going to leave this little area now. And we're going to move toward the, I need to move my chair. I'm sitting at a twist. Right, I'm going to put in the top of the the big toadstool, and we're going to start doing the cups. I think you'll enjoy doing the cups. Have I lost somebody? It feels like somebody's not there anymore. Marie's missing.
I'm here. It's just my computer sitting behind my head. I didn't want you staying at the back of my head. I'm using the big screen.
That's fine, Marie, as long as I haven't lost you. Right. So if we find where our hair's eye is, we're going to imagine that the cups are coming up here. So you know where where Alice's hair ends, if you maybe just want to put a line in where her hair is, if you imagine she's going to have a hat. So if you just want to put a little guideline that's going to go here, that's eventually going to be her hat, but it also lets you know which area you're working on. to do your cups. So finding where your hair, the hare's eye is, I want it just above. So I'm just going to come to about here, round about here, and I'm going to start creating a little bit of a toadstool. So just by creating that sort of shape, the top of a toadstool shape. And if you want your toadstool to be coming round the corner a little bit, just bring it down a bit further on one side. So it's a little bit quirky and it feels like it's on its side a little bit. So I'm just going to do the top bit of the toadstool. So if we now come along and create a little square, a little triangle coming up into it, and come along and then do another little triangle coming up, and maybe another one here, and come along to meet that line that you've just done. And then if you just have another little line coming out here, and then the same at the other side, that'll be the undercarriage, and we'll eventually do the stem and things. But I just want to have this point here because this is what's going to be balancing our cups. So if the toadstools coming to the side, you want to at least have your very first dish being straight. So if you find where your highest point of your toadstool is, and then just do a little line coming through it so that it's kind of straight but hooking up a little bit like that. That's going to be your saucer, and it's straight so that it can hold them all. So you have that little line, and then just come up and bring it around the corner a little bit, and do the same at the other side. Then you know that this is going to be the inside of your saucer. So we want to have the cup sitting inside the saucer. So if we just put a little straight line here, and then we're going to create like a little oblong shape, which is going to be the bottom of the cup. And you don't need to worry about it being precise or anything, because this is Alice in Wonderland, it's quirky, so you don't need to worry about it being precise at all. So from this point here, if we go along this straight bit, we're now wanting to create the shape of a cup just coming up like so. So you're just kind of doing upward C's all the time. And then once you've got that sort of shape, you know that you can just bring up the side. This is the side of the cup now. So just coming up straight to about there. And now we want it to come down like a C. So we're coming down like so to create the first shape of the cup. And if you just create a little line coming in a little bit, just so that you can see where the inside of your cup is going to be, you know that your next cup is going to be in that space. So first of all, I'm going to give it a handle. So if you want to come over to this side, and then just create a loop that comes down and in, and then a little swirly bit, like so. And we'll start when you start getting your coloured pencils and things in, start changing it. So that's us. So we can now close off this saucer a little bit. And we also want the saucer to look like it's got like it's coming up round a little bit. So if you come round to the corner here, and then start to create a little bit of a line and make it a bit squiggly, like so, and then going round the corner there. So if you just use your pencil to darken that sort of area, you start to see that that's got a little bit of a groove in there. And that's where it's going to be at its darkest, to let you look like it's going down into it. Right, so now we're going to create our next cup. So this next cup is going to be sitting at a tilt. So you imagine it's sitting inside this cup. So if you start to bring a little line coming up like so. And then doing your downward C again, bring your cup that it's coming down into the cup like so. And then if we do that other little hook around to let us see that there's something going to be sitting inside that cup as well. So I'm going to try and now make this a bigger cup because it's nice to have them all different styles as well. So for the next cup, it's going to be coming up a bit taller than what the other ones have been. And so you want the next side to be coming up, kind of mirroring that. And then again, we need to create that sort of loop coming down so that it looks like it's going to have something inside it. You can kind of, every time, if you keep making that little loop, you kind of see what space you've got to create your next cup. So I'm going to come back to the second cup and just give it a handle as well, just the same as what you've done before, just a loop and then a squiggle coming down. A bit like an S. That one's like an S, that one's like a back to front S. And then do the same on this one. You're all quiet. You're all concentrating. And now we're going to make another cup and it's going to be sitting at a tilt as well. So we'll have it coming out on the side. So have a line coming out like so. And then same at the other side so that you're kind of mirroring it a little bit, but you want it kind of coming up a little bit higher to make it look like it's at a tilt. And then create that little downward stroke again, and then hook, bring a little hook up round the corner again. And then that gives the space for one more cup before, hopefully you've got room for your one more cup before you reach your hat, but it doesn't matter if you don't, you know. So this one's going to be a bit fatter in the sense that it's a different shape, kind of coming round, so kind of rounded sort of shape rather than a straight up. And then doing the same coming out. And then we have it coming round and up, and then round and up at this side, then it's a bit more like a, I don't know what kind of shape that cup is called, but it's more like a jug than a cup. And because this is the last one, you can then create your sort of circular, well, it's more like an oval. So if you go round the corner like so, and then just join it up. Now, once we start using our pencils, we can start to create definition and shape inside the cups. So what the cups that we've got left just need to have their handles put on as well. So just doing the same. Same with them all. Right, we'll start colouring them now. So for this, we'll just try and get lots of different coloured cups so that they look like they're a bit mismatched. So my first one I did was blue. So like what we've done before, that kind of rule of finding 3 shades of blue and starting off with whatever your lightest one's going to be. So I'm kind of using blue and a turquoise and a blue. So a pale blue, then like a turquoisey colour, and then a darker blue. But you decide what colours of cups you want. Right, so I'm starting with the palest blue. I'm going to start inside my saucer. So I'm going to start doing some lines to make it look like when we do the lips and things. So if you, my lead's broke on that. Let me just quickly grab a different blue. Use Faber-Castell blue. So I'm going to create a little line that comes down and out. So from the top into a loop, so that it looks like the saucer is going down and up. So it makes it look like it's got shape. So it's like when we do the lips and we put the lines in to make it look like it's like they're plump. It's the same sort of idea. And the idea is to have it whiter in the centre and then darker on the outside. So just starting off light circular motions on the outside line, just going the full way around that outside line with your first layer. Just keeping it close to that line so that you can get that nice white bit in the middle to make it look like it's got a bit of shape. And then the same on the centre. So just getting a little bit of blue in the centre bit on that line. Just round about it. And then moving up your shades to do the same again. So I'm using my turquoisey kind of colour and starting to go around. Keeping it as close into that line as you can so that it looks like it's darker in there. And that there's no any white between your pencil line and your lead pencil and your coloured pencil. And then the same in at the inside bit as well, making that darker. And if you have your grey, or eventually that you would start using your blacks and things, you just want to darken this line here. And just a little bit going around the corner. And then the same here, just a little bit just to create that illusion. And then maybe a little bit just in the centre. And then you want to create a little bit of a shadow that's going to be where the cup is sitting. So if you want to just darken with a brown or a grey, just where that cup, the bottom of that cup is sitting in the saucer. And then the darkest blue. And I'm going to use this dark blue just to create a little bit of a circle coming around there. So it looks, so just a little circly bit coming around either side. And then going in with your blue and then darkening up again, right in at the sides. And then that should start to emphasize that white bit a little bit more. Now I used a gel pen going around my cups to make it look like fine china, but if you don't have that, don't worry. But I kind of went, I've got this glittery gel pen that I went round the outside with, but we can do that at the very end if you have one, but if not, don't worry. Right, we want to have the bottom of this cup really quite dark. So I'm going to start with one of the blues and just slight circular motions. Start to colour that in. There's one layer. And then use a darker blue. Just going around. So I'm going to use my black just now because I kind of like having my black. I'm going to just darken again this bottom of this cup with the black. Right along that bottom line. Because then that starts to make it look like it's a shadow and it's sitting on something. And then using a darker blue, starting to darken up that area. And with this same dark blue, just darken up on the underneath the cup here. And then if you want the cup to start looking round, like what we do with the lips, start to create lines coming up and around. So whatever shape your cup is, try and mirror with little loops at either side. And once you've got that, if you go back to your lighter blue, and then again, like what we do, starting off really light and going around the outside and keeping the central point quite white, and then that'll start to make it look like it's got definition and it's going around a corner, and it's so going around the edges and going along the top. So you can like use your darker blue to create like a lip of the cup. So if you want to then just go in and create this sort of illusion of this being the lip of the cup. So if you have it darker at the ends, then a little bit lighter, and then darker there, then it looks like a rim. And then, oops, I'm going to go back in with my turquoise, but you know, just use whatever colours you like, and then just little circular motions, just emphasising along this area. So if you have some lines coming down, then it starts to look like there's little sparkles in the cup. And just going, keeping it at its darkest on this outside line. So if you want to just darken these outside bits up. And then going underneath that rim that you've done with your next colour, and just is everybody managing okay? Yeah, good. Right, so we'll come back to all of these things. Everything needs more and more layers, but I want to get more colours into the cups and see how much we can get done today. So the next cup I'm doing is yellows. So again, like what we've done before, find 3 shades of yellow. And in this one, I'm going to use an orange as well to create like a little swirly pattern in it. So quite a dark orange I'm using. I could have done with it being a bit sharper. Let me see if I can sharpen it quickly. So if it's sharp, then you can get quite a nice fine line on your, if you're doing swirl. Right, so along the top, I'm just going to do some little swirls. So I'm going to start at the end, do a line and then a little hoop going around and then another hoop going around and just keep following it until it looks like it's going round the corner. And then with my lightest yellow, which might for me is a cream, start to colour this cup. So like what we've done before, all the way around the outsides and keeping it at its lightest in the centre. And so I'm going to leave the top bit white so that there's a contrast. So there's yellow, orange and white cup. So that's the first shade. And then the next shade of yellow. And using that yellow just to go right round that line that we've just done of that pattern, just darkening in under there and then darkening the very bottom. And then if you've got like a grey or a brown, if you want to start creating the illusion of there being a shadow from this cup. So just going around this bottom bit with a little bit of brown. Just if you do it at its darkest right on the cup and then softly drag a little bit of colour coming out from there, you get like a shadow. And then make that even darker by using a black. I just need to get a drink of water, bear with me. It's just behind me. I left it sitting behind me. Get dry when I'm doing all this talking. Right, and so with that, or the orange that I did there, I'm just going to drag a little bit of orange from the bottom here, coming up into the cup, just little squiggles every now and again. And having it quite dark at the outside. So at both ends that are at the outside, just having them really dark. So I forgot to do the handle on that blue cup, but we'll do the handle on the yellow cup. So just using a yellow to go around that line that you've just done. And then if you go back over it again with the orange to outline it. And then eventually you go back in there with the black just to highlight it. Do your same with your blue one as well. So if you have it quite dark and, oh, just break my pencil. Right, dark on that outside bit and then it getting a little bit fatter at the top. I've just smudged blue everywhere. Right, the next cup, I'm going to do a little rose on there. So if you want to use your normal pencil again, and then find your sort of central part of your cup, just doing a little swirl. So starting off like a circle and then making it go round again to about there. So it's like a bit of a swirl, and then creating leaves that come off that. So just another, you're just kind of layering all these little petals around it. And you can do it, keep going round as often as you want to make it as big as you want. Just keep following the line all the way around. And this cup has got cracks in it. So if you find an area, maybe say at the top there, and then just have a little squiggle coming down and along to the side of the cup. And then have another one coming off there, going around the side. And then wherever you've done that, in the centre, just make it darker, if that makes sense. So it's like a crack, it's very fine line crack, and then where the main part of the crack is a darker area. And then if you just do that in random areas around your cup. Just squiggles going off. And then have it maybe one going up. Maybe have another one going off the side there. Maybe have one coming here as well. Those are just little squiggles, and then every now and again, where it separates, just you have your pencil go in there to create it, make it a bit darker. Does anybody need a little break? No? You're all quite happy? Okay. So this cup, I'm kind of having it kind of white, but having little shades of blue coming into it. So just having a pale blue, or maybe a darker blue. I'm going to use the blue that I had on the first cup, and just have little bits of blue coming in from the bottom. So just keeping it nice and light. Just have a little bit of blue. And then I'm going to use this blue as well inside the cup. So just this little bit up here at both sides, if you've got a little rim bit where you can see inside the cup. And the actual cup I'm using just white. So if you have a little bit of blue that started coming in round the outside, say, and then you go in with your white, you can kind of just sort of smudge that blue in with your white and just colour in your cup with your white pencil. And then if you have some pinks for your rose, pinks and reds or whatever colour you want. So starting off with the pale pink. It's quite hard when it's intricate little flower to have all the definition you would have in a real sort of rose, because normally you would have it like what we've been doing with the white, little areas that are white. So trying to have it that it's kind of at its darkest on the outside where your pencil lines are, just following around that with a pink so that you're still getting a little bit of white in the center of each petal, and then the color going around where your pencil line's been. It's probably the best way to do it. And then just every now and again you can see a little bit of white sitting on those leaves. Not leaves, petals. And then building it up to a darker pink and then a red, maybe doing the same thing, but just maybe having some that are darker than others, so that you're seeing 3 different shades of pink in there rather than just one. And then when you build up to a red, I'll tend to have it just a little bit darker in the center. So just kind of going over your pencil lines with your red, so that you can still see the pink underneath it all. And then giving it a red handle as well. Just following your pencil line. Right, next cup I'm doing again with yellows and reds. So I'm going to create that round shape like what we did in the very first cup. Start to have some little lines, so coming out from the center and having it going around the corner. Probably use your orange. You probably see it better with an orange or a red. So just and I'm going to do some little hearts. So just with the red pencil, just drawn some little hearts that are just going, just 3 of them going along that sort of central point, and then colouring them in. And then using the same red just to create a bit of a squiggle going along the rim of the top, just squiggles. And again, using the red just to make your handle. And then colouring your cup with your palest yellow first. So again, darkest on the outside, palest in the centre, just to create that round illusion. Just going around the outside. And if you want to use either your normal pencil or a black or a grey just to finish this other cup so that it looks like your other cup's in there. So by making it dark along the bottom here, it starts to make it look like it's inside it. And so just having it at its darkest, if I just get a darker yellow, just having it at its darkest at the bottom of the cup. And then that starts to emphasize that white area in the middle, making it look like it's round, keeping it dark on the outside. And then with a darker colour, an orange or a red, just emphasising that bottom bit, just keeping it at its darkest, so it's like a shadow in there, but just using something other than a grey or a black. And just having it coming up around the outside a little bit. We'll come back, all these need a lot more layers and blacks and things going around them, but this is just giving us a start. And then the top cup is pink. So again, doing those little lines to make it look round, just following the shape of the cup. And then I'm going to create a little bit of a rim lip going around as well. So just using the pink just to draw a line around there. And then light circular motions. Start to colour it in a little bit, leaving it white in the centre. And if you want to put a little bit of the pink inside as well, like I'm going to just create a little bit of a lip inside there as well. So just with the pink, just going along that line so that you've got another line coming around to make it look, and then just darkening up inside there. So starting off with the pink, just going around the outside line, so you've still got an area that's white right in the center, and then you would bring in your greys and your blacks just to make that look like a shadow. So if you have a grey, just following that line that you've just done inside your cup, and just keep the grey on the outside. Just keep it nice and light, and then just follow it around a little bit, if you can see that. So most of it's white, but you've just got this sort of grey, and if you bring your grey coming down the side as well, then that'll make it start to look round. And then the grey to make it look like a shadow inside the cup. And then it's just a case of darkening that up with different shades of pink, finding a darker pink. And doing the same again. Just if you keep those little grooves that we do darker at the bottom, again, that helps make it look rounder. And just colour in some more of it. Just oops. And then the same with its handle. So hopefully you've got some cups. We need to come back and do like more layers and things on them. But how have you done with your cups? Yeah? Oh, nice, Beatrice. They're brilliant. They're brilliant, Teresa. Lovely. Oh, lovely, Heather. You've done amazing. But, you know, you can print this PDF again and again, and you can come back to it because, you know, sometimes doing it for the first time, and when you're doing it along with somebody else, you feel rushed. You can do it again at home at your leisure. My cups are smaller than my original ones, but they never turn out the same twice. And so if you do have a gold pen, it's really nice to go around the outsides with it, and it starts to make it look like bone china. But we can do that at the end. So with your normal pencil, we've got the top half of our toadstool. And so kind of want it to look like it's bent, not bent, but quirky and crooked. So finding the sort of central point and just putting in a bit of a line that's coming in and round, and then do the same at the other side so that you kind of know how fat you want your stalk to be. And then with the first line, just follow it so that it's kind of swooping a little bit, and then just mirror it. And then when you've got your stalk in, you can end these little bits. These bits can come around. Now you can either draw in your little circles and things, or you can let them evolve as you start colouring in. It's up to you, but we'll get another toadstool in, so kind of in line with your clock, just creating another sort of This one's a bit of a more of a pointy one. And then this is a fat stalk. So just taking it more to the end. I'm just going to finish off Alice's hair there. And then if you want to have another toadstool behind it, just create the top of one. And then coming along. And then having your stalk come down into the top of the other one so that it looks like it's going behind. So again, so it's a bit thinner and it's, so it looks like it's gone crooked behind there. If you want to give your little toadstool a house, then just, I drew a little door here, so just drawing a door. A door with a little circle for a window with this cross going through it. And then we'll start to colour in our toadstools. So for that, I use different shades of reds, oranges and yellows. So, but you know, you can do them whatever colour you like. So just getting, oops, my charger. So just getting so maybe an orange for your first sort of layer, and an ochre yellow or any shade of yellow, and a red. And then once you've got those first layers on, you can darken them up again with even darker red. So if you keep your deepest, darkest red for what you do at the very end. So like, I've probably got 4 colours that I'm using. So this one's the really deep dark red. This is a rouge one, it's called. So starting with orange and keeping it light. If you want to draw your little circles in, then, you know, just use this or your normal pencil just to create. And I like to have them that they're kind of going off, so it looks like they're still going over the top. Just squiggly circles. Maybe put one down here at the bottom as well. And then starting off, light circular motions, colouring from the, so starting on the outside line and working your way around, trying to keep an area in the centre that's white as well, kind of like what we've been doing all the way through, because you don't ever really want anything to be just a block colour. You kind of want it to have a range of tones in it to help it look a bit more realistic. So we'll get this first sort of layer in. I'm just going all the way around the outside first, and then going around the outsides of where I've created the circles and leaving an area that's got a little bit of white. So the area that's kind of whiter, that'll be at its, the bit that'll be at its lightest, and then it gets darker and darker with the darkest points being all the way around the outside. So now moving up to the reddy sort of tone and doing the same again. And so if you leave some areas that are just orange, but then some that have got the red sitting on top of them, then you start to really build up value. And then once you've got a few layers on, you can start to press down. Don't press down hard yet, but once you've got quite a lot on, it's quite nice to have it really dark at the top here as well, because that'll help make it look like there's a shadow where the saucers causing a shadow. And so where I've got it kind of light, I'm going to bring in some of the yellow. So just bring it in just every now and again in area, not everywhere. Just have some yellow. And then move on to a darker red again. It's quite nice sometimes with toadstools to use some of your browns around the outside, because sometimes they have that, when you look at them in the wild, they've got those sort of like browny tinges going along the edges. And so if you have a little bit of the red, so where you've made your little groovy bit, if you have a little bit of red coming up there, that just emphasizes that. And I do that quite a lot. You don't have to. So I'm having it at its darkest, going all the way around the outside. And hopefully you're starting to build all these different shades and tones starting to build up. So it just doesn't look like one block colour. So when you've come around this corner, if you want to use your red just to darken that bit up, it just helps make it look like it's come around the corner a little bit. And it's just a case of just continuing to build up the layers, doing it this way. If you want to go back to your first colour again and then start to build over the top, then, you know, I'm going back to my first red. I'm not bothered about having any more orange in there. And then just going over the top. And so once you get to a point where you've got a few layers in there, if you want to press down hard, you start to burnish it and it starts to look shiny. And if you don't want it to be any darker, and you want to burnish it, you like the colours you've got, if you use a white and press down really hard, then, so like if I was to go in with my white and the colours are already there and I start pressing, then you start to blend all those colours together. And it just makes it a bit more vibrant. See how you got on doing that? And then you can go back over it again with a darker red again. And so you're starting to move the pencil around, create sort of shapes and definition in there. So I want it really, really dark at the top. So I might use a brown or a black in here, right underneath that saucer. Just using a bit of black just to create that shadow. Just gradually drag it in. If you have it at its blackest, right on the point where it sort of touches the toadstool. And then bring your reds back in again over the top of that shadow. So once you've got loads of layers in, you start to see, once you start to press down hard, see how you can make it quite shiny. Right, so this toadstool will need some more shade in a little while, but we'll come back to it. We'll start doing the underneath and the stalk. So for the stalk, I sometimes use like a skin tone or a pale brown, or this was quite nice, this rose pale, which is in the Prismacolors, or like in Faber-Castell, your light flesh tone, it's quite a good one, along with some browns. So if, like, I've got an ochre brulee and a rose pale in my Prismacolors, but in the Faber-Castells, the light flesh one, or the rose beige, what's it called again? I forget the names of them, I use them that much, but like any pale browns or pale sort of creams even, or a grey. If you're doing greys, just use different shades of grey. If you're using browns, just use different shades of brown. And if you're using like a skin tone, just use the different shades of skin, if that makes sense. Just try to have 3 sort of colours. So I need another one. I might use like a yellowy colour. So with the stalk, the idea is to have it that it's at its darkest underneath where the toadstool roof is. I don't even know what you would call that. So you would have it at its darkest here, and we'll eventually start bringing in our shadows and things. And then if you have an area that's white going all the way down the side, then it starts to make it look round. So I'm going to start putting my first layers in, going down this far side, and then leaving it that it's a little bit white all the way down there. So just having that sort of white area will help make it look quite round. And just a little bit of colour just right on the outside line. And have it quite dark, but we'll build up that. And then the same underneath, if you want to have it the same sort of shade as your stalk, you can, or you can have it a little bit darker, but just building it up so there's a little white bit in the center, like what we're always doing. Darkest around the outsides, a little bit white in the middle. And then if you have like a brown or something a bit darker, you can create your little lines. So I tend to have them coming round a corner a little bit. So And then with the brown again, just going around the outside and just dragging softly a little bit of darkness to create a shadow. Again, if you just have the darkness on the outside, it starts to look more realistic. And try not to have any white between the colour and the brown and the shadow, so as you get that illusion. So just using this browny colour now just to create more of a shadow coming down the stalk. So just coming down maybe to about there. Then that starts to look like a shadow. And then bringing that darkness, not darkness, as I'm losing the ability to talk at this time of the day. Just having it at its darkest coming along this outside line. And then once you've had a few layers in there, we need to get some more. I'm going to put in some more, maybe a bit of a yellowy tone. So like an ombre sort of colour over the top of what I've just done. And that kind of brightens it up a little bit, and then I've gone quiet. And so if you have a black or a darker brown, build it up to a black, then start to emphasize in underneath there. Whoops. Then that makes it look more realistic again. And then just continuing to add more layers in there, just keep going in and darkening it up. And then when you're happy with that, you can go over it with your white and just burnish it all. So if we just get another wee layer in here. And just have it a little bit darker as every time it goes around a corner. I'm going to go back to my first shade, my rose pink one, and go over that again and just add a little bit more layer. Hopefully you can see that, how that white area starts to make it look like it's round. And then if you want to go over that with a white and press down hard, then you start to blend all those colours together. Put some white in that white bit as well. Everybody managed to get a toadstool and some cups then, and a hair so far. Right, I think if we do the rest of the toadstools, or I think if we do Alice's eye next, and then get some of her face started, and then we can get the Cheshire Cat and the hat and things in next Saturday, but we'll try and get some of Alice's face done. So if you have your normal pencil, and then in the eye that we've got, we're going to create her iris. So where the eye is kind of at its fattest is where I tend to create my iris. So if you want to just put a line, it's starting to be a circle there, and then the same just here, and then leave an area that's white between this line and just try and fill in this circle. And then do the same to create your pupil, just sort of mirror where your lines are. So if you start off here and then here, then it kind of helps you to then try and have it the same sort of fatness between each sort of side, so that, but you can always use your pencils to don't stress too much if you haven't got it exact yet. You can kind of use your pencils to do it as well. And so giving Alice blue eye, so starting off with my palest blue and then building up to a darker blue. So I'm going to start just going around the outside of the iris, nice light circular motions, and filling in that area, trying to leave some white in the centre to make it look a bit sparkly. So just following it all the way around. And then doing the same on the inside, in between the pupil, just having some little squiggles that's starting to come down. So you're creating some little lines in there. And if you just have them different sort of sizes, so some are coming all the way down to the top, and then some just little small ones. And then this one's coming up and round a little bit. And then building it up to a darker blue. And then keeping it at its darkest on this outside line. So if you want to use your next shade of blue just to emphasize that line, and then start to drag a little bit of the colour up into where you've already been. I've got a cat crunching. If you hear crunchy noises, it's my cat eating ions. And so having it at its darkest right along the top, because if you imagine that's going to be like a shadow where the eyelid's coming over. So just keep going over that outside line, just keep darkening it up. And then the same on this inside, just having your lines coming down again and just building it up, little squiggles. You can either create your sparkle by drawing it On this one, I used a gel pen. So you can either colour all of your pupil in black or just go back in at the end with a gel pen. Or you can create your sparkle by just drawing one in. So I'll just create a bit of a line in here, maybe one here, some circles. And then with a darker blue, start to colour in your pupil. And then eventually you'll go over that with the black. I'm just turning it on its side a little bit so that I can, so I'm just going to use this blue. I'll eventually use a black, but I'm just going to emphasize this line that lets me know where her eye actually is. So we've got our first layers in there. We need a lot more layers. But if you want to get your normal pencil, create an eyelid for her. So just using the actual shape of her eye, you can make it as big as you like. But I'm just sort of using her eye as a mirror sort of shape. Just to create her eyelid. And she's got blue eyeshadow on, so again, like what we've done before, starting with our lightest blue, starting to colour her eyelid and then leaving a little white spot at the top, at the centre, just to make it have a shine, sparkly bit. And then building it up darker and darker. So I'm just pretty much colouring all of her eyelid this time. I do her eyes different ways all the times, all the girls that I do. So, but this is just, on this occasion, we're colouring all of her eyelid in. So if you have your normal pencil, again, if you just imagine that her eye is kind of ending here, so there's a little bit of a space between where her, so if you use your normal pencil just to highlight that sort of point in her eye, and then doing the same again here, then we can start to get all different bits and bobs going on in there. And then if you get a little line going on here just underneath, then that we can start to build up around that. So if you have any of your fleshy tones or whatever colour face you want to do, I usually use the light flesh or the beige red with the Faber-Castell, but because I'm using Prismacolor today, I'm using a peach and a beige. But we're just going to build up slowly. It'll get darker and darker around this area. But if you want to start putting in that sort of first layer of whatever flesh tone you want, but if you kind of mark off this sort of area here, just make it a little bit darker by creating a few layers rather than pressing down hard. You can start to see where you want the bag of her eye to be. Now usually I do the bag white, but with Alice I did her a little bit darker. So just following around her eye with this light tone, and we'll get that darker and darker in a minute. You probably won't see much just now, But if we just try and get a layer going on above her eyelid. And up to underneath her hair. And just get some first layers in. We'll build this up to be a lot darker. But just bringing this colour all the way down onto her cheek. The time is just flowing in. It's 1:45 already. I can't believe it. So we've got a little bit of white starting to appear just under here, but we're going to have it really dark here. And then, so this colour lets us see which the areas that are creating the shape of her face. Bringing it to life a little bit. And bringing this all the way down to about here. So I sometimes just leave a little bit of a white area. So where the hair is, you've got your face line, then a little bit of white, and then you start to get your skin sort of colour coming in. That helps make it look round again, her face. And then it starts to get darker again down here on her chin. And then I tend to do a little circle. So just on her chin, just create a little bit of a circle. And then we know that around that is where we're going to put more skin tone. And then it tends to be white all up this area here. So try and leave a little bit of white there. Just get this first sort of layers in and take that colour all the way off the page. So that gives us a first layer. And as well, where her nose is, if you want to then just, where her nose is, that line ends, if you want to just create a little loop coming around, just start to create her nose in the end. Same at the other side. And if you want to create a little bit of a circle, just lightly, so that you know that you're going to colour around to that. And then we're going to get a little bit of the first sort of layer going in under her hair. So, and then we know that this area here is kind of white. And we're going to keep building up this tone, getting it darker and darker to look like a shadow where her hair is coming over. But hopefully that gives you a bit of a start to see where you're heading. And then here, just a little bit going around this bit of her eye. Right, so now if you want to go up a shade or use a pinkier tone or a browner sort of tone, I'm going to use this peachy colour. So maybe the medium flesh or the ones we usually use on your faces. Then if we start to get it darker in where you finished off with your blue eyeshadow, and just start to create a little bit of depth in there. And then just bringing this darker tone into where you've been, just down here. And around her eye, just starting to darken that up. Just following it all the way along that line and make it really dark in there. You can eventually put in a brown or a black as well to deepen that area. And then again, where we've already been, going up along her hairline. And just gradually, if you have it at its darkest up at the top, and then gradually just drag it down, make it softer, then you create more of a face sort of shape. And then again, using this coming down onto her cheek. And eventually we'll put in some darker pinks and reds and things in there, but this is us just getting our first sort of layers in. So hopefully you're starting to see a little bit of a white area just starting to grow there, but it's not like the usual round bag that I do. It's just a little bit different. So the idea is to get all this sort of area whiter, and then we'll start to get a bit of her nose done. If you have like a more of a like a, not a red, but this is a brown hen, this one. So it's a kind of reddy brown. If you have something like that, or any kind of brown, doesn't really matter. You don't have to get hung up really, but it's just about getting darker. It's just building it up so that each time you do another layer, you're bringing in a darker tone. And then just using that to highlight that line to make it look like what do you call it? Oh, I'm really terrible just now for words falling out of my head. What am I trying to say, Teresa? What is the word that I'm trying to say?
Is it the crease?
The crease. The crease. Oh dear. So yeah, just trying to emphasize the crease now. Just by darkening that up. And if you use your black now in the crease, then that starts to make it look more like there's a bit of depth in there. Oh, it's coming off the camera. So just darkening up in there. And then once you start bringing your black into we'll start bringing some black into our pupil now, and then that starts to make her eye come alive. And then we've made quite a bit of progress. We've still got a lot to do. But we've done quite a bit. So just going over her pupil and just keep lots of layers to darken it up, and then when you've got quite a few layers on there, once you start to press down really hard, then it'll get really, really black in there. And if you want to as well, use your black to emphasize that line while you're at it. Then that just makes her eye start to pop. So yeah, press really, really hard once you're starting to do your pupil. Because you want it really, really black in there. So if you have any like burgundies or reddy tones, I'm doing a little bit of red around her eye. It just gives Alice a bit of a darker sort of look to some of my innocent girls. So I'm just using this Brulee one, the Braun Henny I'm using. And then just putting a little bit of red in this line here at the bottom. And then doing the same at the other side on that line that we created earlier on, just bringing in a little bit of red. And then again, using it to start darkening up where the crease is. And just bringing it all the way along to just under her hairline. And then once I'm happy, just burnishing that little bit, just right in there, making it really, really dark. And in my original one, I did a little bit of that reddy tone in around her eye as well. I must have been enjoying myself and just putting a bit of red in there. So a little bit more blue into her eye. So if you've got a darker blue again, and then if you start to create more of a shadow, so just this little bit underneath her eyelid, making it really dark in there, making it like a bit of a hood. So if you imagine that it's coming over and along down this bit as well. So inside. And then again, doing more of the same of what you've already done in the eye, just dragging more colour up and in. And then if you have your greys again, where's my grey gone? We're going to create a shadow in the white of her eye. So just starting to drag from the top down, coming down around the outside. So there's still white right in here, but so just that helps it look like that's the white of the eye. And this is where the eye sort of ends on that line. And the same here at this side. And creating your shadow just underneath that where the black line is. And then just darken up her eye again with her eyeshadow. So with a darker blue, going in right in at that line where it's black, and then just darkening that up. If you have it at its darkest on that line, then it just makes her eye come alive a little bit more. And then again, coming around the outside, darkening this up again. Every time you put in another layer, you kind of have to start darkening up this outside bit to help it look round. Well, I think we've reached 4 o'clock, so if we stop for now, and then we can see what we still have to do next Saturday. We've still got a lot to do, haven't we? but we're getting there. How's everybody done?